You ever see a grown man get told by a 15-year-old that his little kingdom doesn't mean squat? Yeah, that happened. But let me back up a sec. I'll never forget the way Officer Brian Hensley's voice just cut through the summer haze, loud enough that half the kids by the diving board stopped mid-laugh. She can't enter unless she covers up now. Community relax no exceptions. He said it like it was gospel, like this HOA dress code was some holy law passed down from the clouds. And there was Lacey, my niece, 15, barefoot on hot concrete, clutching her towel to her chest like it was a shield. Her suit? One piece, navy blue, modest as a church bake sale. Her crime? Being a teenage girl, I guess. I stepped forward, told him flat out, I'm her guardian. Unless you're real law enforcement, you don't get to bark orders at a child. He didn't move, just doubled down. HA compliance is enforceable within this district. If you got a problem, take it up with the board. I just smile because I don't take things up with boards. I take them up in courtrooms federal, if necessary. My name's Daniel Greer, civil rights attorney, and my brother's a family court judge. But that day, I was just a man keeping a promise to his late sister. For a moment, he hesitated. Then, maybe sensing he'd stepped in it, he let Lacey through. Lacey just held her towel the way people hold bandages, and I could see her hands trembling. After a shower, she joined me out on the porch, swing the same swing my sister painted back when she still had the strength to hold a brush. He made me stand there while he yelled about modesty, she finally whispered. He told the lifeguard to watch me until I changed. I tried to steady my voice. You did nothing wrong. She nodded, but I could see something slipping away from her, right there on the porch, under the glow of the porch light, as if the pool the place her mother taught her to swim had suddenly turned into a minefield. It wasn't just the rule. It was the power they thought they had over our kids and the silence they counted on from the rest of us. Next morning, an envelope showed up, $500 fine for disruptive behavior at a shared amenity, plus a highlighted clause for not enforcing the dress code with a minor. No mention of Hensley's little power trip. Just the HOA doubling down, hoping I'd back down. I didn't. I started making calls. Quiet ones. Turns out, this wasn't just Lacey. Other parents had stories kids sent home for exposed shoulders, a boy benched for a t-shirt, another humiliated over swim trunks. Nobody wanted to complain out loud, but someone always cares. By noon, my notebook was full of stories. I was already 3 moves ahead because the second they fined me for what their officer did, they'd turn this into an official dispute. That opens legal doors, and I know how to kick those open. That afternoon, I went to the park, the one spot the HOA security didn't watch too close. Talked to a few moms. Stories came out. One said Hensley told her daughter she looked like she was asking for attention. Another's son wouldn't swim unless the guard was looking away. Every story added up. Quiet policy, enforced by a badge that meant nothing, and fear that kept everyone in line. That's when I spotted Marlene Ortiz, HOA treasurer, hovering by the benches. She wasn't talking yet, but she was there, and she heard everything. That night, I organized what I had, 6 written testimonies, anonymous or not, and a pattern of intimidation. It wasn't about modesty. It was about control. The next board meeting wasn't for another week, but the office was open. I walked in and asked for personnel files for all security contractors, especially Hensley. Marlene was there, watching me over the edge of her computer. The receptionist told me to submit it in writing. Already did. I replied and flashed a dated copy, citing the Sunshine Law and the HOA's own charter. Marlene's fingers froze on her keyboard. She knew the game was changing. Later that day, as I dropped lunch off at Lacey's school, Marlene found me outside. She looked exhausted, like someone whose conscience finally kept her up at night. She admitted she'd been there at the pool. I didn't agree with it. I didn't vote for the new code last quarter, but I didn't stop it. Because Colleen said we needed visual consistency, and if I raised my hand, I'd be overruled anyway. Her hand shook as she gave me a note from last month's board meeting, one line, highlighted in pink, Security should address team dress code breaches on site immediately. Physical relocation may be used if needed to preserve community standards. She hadn't written that part, she said, but she didn't delete it either. Her eyes filled with tears. Because I have a daughter, too. She's 13. The bell rang, and kids poured out into the sun. And for a second, we just stood there, both wishing we'd spoken up sooner. The next morning, the retaliation started. Another fine. Failure to respond respectfully. $250 more. My neighbor's patio flagged for a permit violation retaliation, pure and simple. And there's a new HOA security officer just standing outside my house, arms folded, making sure I noticed him. I poured another coffee and started reading the bylaws as a lawyer, not a neighbor. There was no clause for disruption of order. They were inventing violations now, hoping I'd slip up. But I don't break easy. I drove out to the county office and dug into public records contracts, payments, vendor lists. Found out the HOA security firm was just a shell company owned by the board president's casino license. No credentials. Nothing. Hensley? Site supervisor. Not law enforcement, not even bonded. The liability risk was enormous. I scanned everything, then called an old colleague, Laura Jensen, now at the State Department of Regulatory Oversight. I've got a minor, an HOA, and an unlicensed contractor playing cop. She said, send everything. The next day, a formal regulatory investigation was open. 2 days later, Lacey looked at me and asked, did they do it again? I shook my head. No, but they're going to wish they hadn't done it the first time. That night, I sat down with her. We need to file a complaint. Only if you're okay with it. She didn't even blink. Do it. Use my name. I don't want to be scared to swim. So I did attached every letter, contract, email. Submitted at 10:32 p.m. By morning, it was real. The board had no idea the clock was ticking. There was one piece missing, proof that Colleen and the board knew about Hensley's lack of credentials and did nothing. Marlene called, said there was an email chain weeks before the incident where board members flagged concerns about Hensley. Colleen shut it down. We'd lose authority if we questioned our own staff. Marlene didn't have the thread, but Lynn, alternate board member, might. Next day, I found Lynn, and in his cluttered den, he handed over the printout. It was all their warnings, concerns, Colleen's stonewalling. Now I had everything. I organized a private community forum off HOA turf, sent invitations through quiet channels. That night, I laid it all out, no drama, just the truth. Residents spoke up, stories tumbled out. Marlene stood and admitted, I saw the directives. I didn't stop them. I regret that more than anything. The back row board members slunk out. Neighbors connected the dots. This wasn't about one child, one rule. It was about power, silence, and who finally decided to break both. Regulators showed up the next morning, unmarked cars, clipboards, no warning. By noon, files were on tables in the sun. News vans rolled in. Colleen tried to talk her way in. She got a document instead. Marlene handed over originals. Hensley showed up, got handed a sealed envelope, left without a word. By the time the last table was folded up, the spell had broken. Neighbors started to talk again, right there on the sidewalk, like someone let the air back into the neighborhood. A week later, the verdict: Merrick Property Compliance Services, banned from the state. Colleen, removed pending review. Lacey and I walked to the pool together. The new sign read, all residents welcome. Discrimination-free zone. Lacey didn't hesitate. She slipped her feet into the water, glanced back at me, and I finally sat on the bench her mother once claimed. Change moved quiet in Brookhaven trail snow, shouting, no protests, just roots spreading underfoot. People who'd never spoken at meetings started running for the board. Old finds were questioned. Marlene quit the board and started a teen mentorship group. Lacey and her daughter became best friends. One night, Lacey handed me a drawing, the pool pavilion in sunlight with a girl mid-dive, no shadows. Some promises don't need plaques, they just need to be kept. If you've ever had to fight for what's right against a little empire of silence, hit subscribe, drop your story in the comments, and let me know where you're watching from. You're not alone, and you never have to stay quiet.